Hello there. Welcome into a Tuesday edition of the show, inching so much closer to the holiday, but much to do before we jet off to all corners of the globe. Appreciate you tuning in, whether it's on air, online, or through the Extra Sports 1300 app. And I cannot emphasize this enough. It is free to download. Free to listen. And you don't just have to listen to this show on the app. You can listen to any of our shows. Switchback Soccer, one of our other live sporting events, all available on the app. It is worth the price of admission, which again is free. Veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you, and I would love to get your take on any and all of them. The text line and the phone line, the same number for your convenience, 719-247-1313. Keep that number handy as well, because I will have tickets to give away today. Feeling especially generous, because I know the Nuggets are putting you through a lot right now. Switchback's 4th of July game, Pikes Peak or Bus Rodeo. I got tickets to both, and I would love to give them away to you today. So keep that number handy and keep it locked on this radio station. Yep, let's start with soccer. And I would say that we only start the show with soccer if something really good or really bad happens, but we are talking about the U.S. men's national team, so it rarely, if ever, is good. Last night was either going to be one of the best wins for U.S. men's soccer, and certainly the best win of Greg Berhalter's tenure as head coach, or it would be the end of said head coach, Greg Berhalter. But I forgot who I was dealing with. I am dealing with the measure 5 times, don't even cut once, USSF, United States Soccer Federation, after another embarrassing loss. And in sports, it matters so much more how you lose and not the simple fact that you lost. Uruguay's better than the United States. Like they just are. So losing to them is not surprising. Maybe you thought they'd be a little complacent, having their spot in the next round cemented. They did not rest their best players. Maybe you thought the motivation, I mean, that's really what you based it on, right? The motivation of the U.S. men's national team would win the day. Not because they're better than Uruguay. They're not better. But we were treated to another embarrassing performance. Another rough watch. And I'm not just talking about the camera angle. Moments after, allegedly, Greg Berhalter, sure looked like he was doing this, signaled the score of the other match that America needed to go their way. Moments after signaling to his team, which I thought he said he wasn't going to do, that they were going to be solely focused on the task at hand, seems to flash them the score, which is, hey, things are going right. Uruguay scores almost immediately. And just, the United States couldn't even get on the board. Right? It was another match full of tantrums and anger and fight that was directed in every direction but at Uruguay. It wasn't just a loss. It was another poor, bad, embarrassing, whatever adjective you wanted to use, performance from the U.S. men's national team, which has become a staple of Greg Berhalter's time as head coach. Now, in unison, everyone saying that Greg Berhalter should be gone. But again, the measure 5 times, never cut once, USSF put out the following statement. We will be conducting a comprehensive review of our performance in Copa America and how best to improve the team and results as we look towards the 2026 World Cup. That sounds like they're getting ready to fire him, but I thought that they weren't going to bring him back the last time they did some soul searching, which was after the World Cup in Qatar, right? And they just brought the guy back. So my optimism level and your optimism level, if you root for the United States of America in soccer, should not be that high. Allow it to be a nice little surprise if they do end up firing Greg Berhalter. But Greg Berhalter is merely the most fixable thing. What the lack of progression, the lack of improvement that this team has shown, despite by every metric being the most talented group of American soccer players we have ever seen, the reason why they haven't progressed is a top to bottom mess up on the part of U.S. soccer. Somebody texted me last night. My boss texted me last night, asked me why this team continues to underachieve, continues to look poor. And I said coaching is one. But there is, and I said this after Panama, there's an entitlement, an immaturity of sorts with this team because they are the most talented group of American soccer players that we have ever seen. It almost feels like they think things should be easy for them, that they deserve things because of their talent. And it's why we have these consistent blow-ups from players. Sergino Dest, Tim Weah, even Christian Pulisic. What Fox didn't show you when that official, who was, yes, garbage, like that's a part of the story, but if you want to blame that, that's going to keep Greg Berhalter on the job. So be careful how much you want to blame the officiating in last night's match. They showed you that he refused to shake Christian Pulisic's hand. But what they didn't show you is the fact that as he's walking over to the officials, he's gesturing to them to go celebrate with Uruguay as they were a part of that effort. That's your team. Go celebrate with them. I actually don't blame an official for not wanting to shake that guy's hand as he's walking over and yelling at him. Is there reason for Pulisic to be frustrated? Yes. Is he the poster child for what I am talking about? No. Because he's producing. He's produced. But it's an immaturity with this team. And I think you can point to a lot of the same things you point to with basketball, right? We've had this conversation when it comes to basketball before. Why are the best players in the NBA all Europeans? Why do they seem like all the right stuff when a fair amount of American basketball players don't seem to have that loyalty, team-oriented nature to them? What's the youth system that prioritizes individuals over team? We know youth sports is very big business in this country. And when it is big business, that means that there are going to be families and players that are priced out of it. And you get these very talented, but maybe a bit spoiled athletes. I'm not pointing at one. I'm just talking about the whole. There are a lot of issues with United States soccer that kind of come to mind when you watch a result like that. But that kind of stuff, that's like institutional. That's the progress in that is glacial. The movement on that. That's certainly something that has to be looked at with the development of athletes across all sports in our country. But that's a big thing. That's a big thing to tackle. For now, do the easier thing. Do the more fixable thing, which is get a head coach to try and coach some of that out of these players. What struck me last night is the number of players that defended Greg Berhalter. And I don't expect them to say anything less. But Carly Lloyd nailed it, I thought, last night on the Fox broadcast. Maybe I want to use entitled or spoiled, and those are harsh. She said they're comfortable. No wonder they like Greg Berhalter. They know what their role is. They know their spot on the team is secure. And she laid it out from the perspective of somebody who was in a far more effective system on the girls' side. There's still some of those problems, but once you get to the senior level, the national team level, they're playing to win. Win at all costs. Who cares what your name is? We just saw Alex Morgan get left off the Olympic roster. It's far more cutthroat on the women's side than the men's side. And they need a coach that is going to look at this thing as top to bottom as they can. And if this isn't the right combination of players, if players are playing out of position, if there's a fault with the way that they prepare, anything that is within the purview of the head coach of the U.S. men's national team, they should have free reign to change. But why my optimism is low that they'll actually go through with this is perhaps bringing in somebody like let's all bring up the dream scenario, Jurgen Klopp. Maybe the USSF won't like the conclusions that Jurgen Klopp comes to. Maybe an outsider would not be as as in love with everything they're doing, like maybe Greg Berhalter is. I know all of this comes with a caveat that there is probably a hard ceiling here. Right? The U.S. may never win a World Cup. Like, they may never. I don't care how many years you go into the future. They may never win one. Because there are just so many other sports that matter more to us. Okay? So there could be a ceiling. But I don't think U.S. soccer on the men's side has reached it yet. I don't believe that. I think they're capable of more. And also, if you're the USSF, you shouldn't view it as a ceiling. Like, that's for you and me to say, well, the United States, they can only be so good. Right? A World Cup quarterfinalist or a World Cup semifinalist, maybe, or round of 16, whatever it might be. That's for you and I. U.S. soccer should be feeling like they can win one, that they can be the best team in the world. If you don't have people that believe that, then why are they working for you? And they should do everything they can to achieve that, including getting a better head coach. I don't know what they're seeing from Greg Berhalter that makes them believe. I don't know why they brought him back in the first place, but I don't know how you can look at this and say that there has been growth under Greg Berhalter and there's more growth to be expected. So the only conclusion that I can arrive at is that Greg Berhalter fits and is okay with the way they do things. And that's why he remains employed. I don't know what other conclusion I'm supposed to arrive at. I know that the United States is far from the best team in the world. They weren't even the best team on the field last night. But there's got to be more than this. They got to be better than this. And there are a lot of things that can be fixed, can be tweaked to help them reach whatever that ceiling is. Let's start with the easy thing. Let's start with the obvious thing. Do what you got to do. Your comprehensive review. Come back to us. Don't take too long. Come back to us and say Greg Berhalter is no longer the head coach of the U.S. men's national team. And we're really, for real this time, looking for a new head coach. And giving ourselves the absolute best chance to showcase how far we've come on a world stage. It's in our own backyard. This is an opportunity that, can you imagine if the United States does what it did at Copa America in the World Cup? You think this is embarrassing. Wait till they do that in 2 years. And there's no reason to think with the current leadership that anything other than a similar result to Copa America is going to happen to them in the World Cup. And that can't sit well with U.S. soccer. It can't. There is a way to fix it. We'll see if they do it. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on whatever that was last night. Coming up next, we'll look more domestically, so to speak. The Colorado Avalanche continuing to make moves, and the move they made today, or at least one of them. My gosh, I got about 10 Avalanche emails in my inbox today. But the biggest one is not a huge move, but a move that we've come to expect from the Avalanche, and it normally works out. Tell you more about it next. Experience the Switchbacks 4th of July Star Spangled Fireworks Spectacular in the heart of downtown Colorado Springs. It will be the most immersive fireworks show you can have in Colorado. Be there at 5 p.m. to get a special Switchbacks light-up baton provided by Pikes Peak National Bank. Get your tickets now at switchbacksfc.com. Taking your thoughts on, speaking of soccer, what happened last night. The U.S. bounced from Copa America, grouped, as they say, from Copa America with their loss to Uruguay. But this started long before, right? Match one, they win, but they leave multiple goals on the table, which would have come in handy if they would have gotten the result that they wanted last night. Maybe their goal differential situation would have been better. Then they have the embarrassment against Panama, and then they lose last night. And even when they won, it wasn't that great. So just a bad all-around performance, and the U.S. is done. And now where do they go from here? Albert says the U.S. should be U.S. soccer demonstrate how far they have developed in the World Cup when it's been talk, excuses, and apologies for the last 20 years. Now, I hope coach isn't like an excuse, because they should get a new one. But if you're talking about Berhalter and you're talking about U.S. soccer, then yeah, that's what it has been. That's why I'm saying bring in somebody with a proven track record. Don't tell me we can't afford Jurgen Klopp. Okay, does he want the gig or not is another question. Right? Don't do the Laker thing and bring in Dan Hurley and then offer him less than what was being reported, right? They can pay Jurgen Klopp. Okay, I refuse to believe they can. If he doesn't want the gig, then he doesn't want the gig. And that's a whole nother story and somewhat of a referendum on the state of affairs. But at least go out and try. I've always said Greg Berhalter was the guy before the guy, to get them from one point to the next, but not to the ultimate point. Right? And they're just riding with this guy, and they haven't gone better. There's nothing that's better in the last 2 years. Nothing. Time to make a change. But that's part of it, right? If you're, whatever the ceiling is for U.S. soccer, you're never going to reach it when you want to blame officiating. Or you go with the status quo. Bring in somebody that knows what they're doing. Let them get a good look at everything and say, in the next 2 years, all this stuff needs to change. Get it changed. And let's see what happens in 2026. From the 719, the U.S. should be better than what they showed on the field. It felt like the U.S. couldn't even get more than 5 consecutive passes to each other. Lack of ball control or even attacking was just frustrating. And there's some of that, too. We could call this the most talented group of American male soccer players we've ever seen. And they can still play poorly. And I think that it absolutely is part of this story. But if there's more from an execution standpoint, if there's more from, set pieces, how many set piece coaches have they gone through? They mentioned it like 5 or 6. I mean, the point is, we see that the talent is there at a level that we have rarely seen from U.S. soccer. Okay, we can agree on that. Even if it's not quite where we'd like it to be, it's better than it ever has been. Okay? Let's get a coach that gives them a better chance of bringing all of that out. Yes, the United States played poorly. Yes, the officiating was poor. But guess what? It's been poor across the tournament. Right? I think some of this can be placed on Berhalter. But we have to change one of the variables. Right? And the saying always goes, it's easier to change the head coach, fire the head coach than fire the players. Okay? And sometimes that's that's kind of a defeatist attitude, and that's saying that we're not really fixing the bigger problem. I actually think you might be in this case. You actually might be by bringing in a better coach. You may get more out of these players. I mean, at this point, what's the argument to keep Greg Berhalter? I feel like that's where we're at. The burden of proof is on the state. Okay? Everyone is saying Greg Berhalter should be fired. Tell us why he shouldn't. Give us concrete evidence. What tournaments have they won? What big countries have they gone up against and beaten? Like, give us the reasons, what you're seeing from Greg Berhalter at the end of this soul searching or whatever you called it that you're going to do. Come back with concrete evidence that things are getting better. Because, yeah, a lot of people had it in for Greg Berhalter immediately, but there has been nothing to disprove them. This happens all the time in sports. And in soccer, it's the most prevalent. My God, how often do Premier League coaches get fired? There are coaches that have 3 different tenures with the same club because they just run through all of these coaches. It happens all the time in this sport. And U.S. soccer is going to be the bastion of, loyalty, and they're going to keep their head coach. Soccer is known for canning coaches all the time. How many different clubs has Jose Mourinho coached? He's one of the greatest coaches of all time. Like, this happens. You can't argue that Greg Berhalter should keep his job. You just can't. All right. Take your thoughts. We're not done with this. 719-247-1313. But in the meantime, stop me if you've heard this before. First round draft pick fails to live up to expectation in the National Hockey League, acquired by the Colorado Avalanche, and finally realizes his potential. It's happened a lot. They're good at this. Andre Burakovsky, 23rd overall pick in 2013, didn't really quite hit in Washington. He's coming off of a 26-point season. He leaves Colorado off a 61-point season. Valeri Nichushkin, 10th overall pick in 2013, 10-point season his last year in Dallas. This year, he had 53 points for the Colorado Avalanche. But yes, there are some other things going on with him. But still, production-wise, Jonathan Drouin, 3rd pick in that vaunted 2013 draft, scores 29 points his final season in Montreal, comes to Colorado. This year, he essentially doubles his point total. Even a Vladislav Nemesnikov, who had basically a cup of coffee with the Avalanche in the bubble, was productive. This is something the Avalanche have done under Jared Bednar quite a bit, and they've been successful at it. So that's why I kind of pinned the news that Ottawa was going to let Erik Brannstrom walk in free agency, because I'm like, that sounds like an Avs player. And lo and behold, what should hit my inbox today but a press release from the Colorado Avalanche that they have signed Erik Brannstrom, the 15th overall pick in the 2019 draft, to a 1-year deal to familiarize yourself or reintroduce yourself to Eric Brandstrom. Again, the 15th overall pick in the 2019 draft by the Vegas Golden Knights. Traded as part of the Mark Stone deal to Ottawa. Didn't really hit in Ottawa. Ottawa loaded up on a bunch of defensemen in this draft, and the writing was on the wall. Brandstrom available for any team to sign, and the Avs signed him. This is almost an every offseason thing from the Colorado Avalanche. And I think he slots in. I know there's been a lot of debate about the D pairings. I think he'll be one of the top 6. I think he will. I see him slotted next to Calvin DeHaan, who they just picked up yesterday. That's your new third D pairing on the Colorado Avalanche. But this is, once again, a no-risk, high-reward. Who is supposed to get that spot? Sam Malinsky? You want to keep Jack Johnson? Not a lot of great, can't-miss options there. And you're talking about your third D pairing. I think this is a great move by the Colorado Avalanche. You know what they should do? They should actually use Sean Payton's Orphan Dogs line, because I feel like they are more known for that than Sean Payton has been. Sean Payton just now is cobbling together these once highly regarded, well, I don't even know if you could say that other than Zach Wilson. But my point is, the Avs do this. They do it a lot, and it works. And for a guy that is, 24 years old, that clearly the league saw something in him not that long ago, going from a team like Ottawa to Colorado with Jared Bednar as his head coach, I think it could work. Now, will it work? It's kind of a different metric. He is, from a style perspective, think Sam Girard. Right? Brandstrom's smaller defenseman, but he moves the puck. He's a little bit more offensively inclined. You put him with the Calvin DeHaan, who's a defensive defenseman through and through. But it's kind of the same thinking, right? Remember Josh Manson and Sam Girard, how well that worked out? Kind of the same thought process here from the Avalanche, and I like it. And again, we're talking about third D pairing. Well worth it at 1 year and $900,000 or whatever it was that they spent. You know what's interesting about the Colorado Avalanche? At this point, you could almost argue that the Avs do a better job of developing other teams' first-round picks than their own. Right? And I know McKinnon, Makar, Landeskog, those guys, first-round picks, they hit. I get it. But Tyson Jost, Alex Newhook, Martin Kaut, any of those names ring a bell? It's like the Avs do better with other people's first-round picks than they do their own. But hey, as long as you're bringing them in. So the Avalanche continue here at the start of free agency, taking care of everything that they could possibly take care of. It's not the big things. It's not the most important things. Those can't be figured out till later with Landeskog and Nichushkin. But in the interim, Chris McFarland doing everything he can. And I feel like he hasn't missed. Right? Middlestat extension, bringing back Duran on a 1 year, $2.5 million deal. DeHaan and Brandstrom as the new third pairing for the Colorado Avalanche. I like what he's done. And again, it's not going to ultimately tell the tale of whether the Avalanche can get back to the Stanley Cup. That's regarding Landeskog and Nichushkin. But what else are they going to do right now? This kind of stuff. And Chris McFarland's doing well. And compared to the other team that calls Ball Arena home, I will say this. At least they're doing stuff. Right? This is one of the most exciting times of any sports year. Right? Free agency, the draft, all this kind of stuff. Like just stuff going on. And you get excited, and that's where the hope springs eternal again, right? Because you're bringing in guys. You're only getting better. You're not getting worse. At least the Avs are doing things. Can't say as much about the Denver Nuggets, although I have some thoughts, a theory, really, when it comes to the lack of moves made by the Denver Nuggets. I'll share that with you coming up in a little bit. In the meantime, take your thoughts on the newest member of the Colorado Avalanche and just the work that the Avs have put in since free agency opened. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, our other semifinal in our Goat of Goats tournament will pit Tiger Woods against Michael Jordan. I'll let you know Ali or Gretzky, who came out on top of that matchup. That was from yesterday. Celebrate America's birthday with a chance at $5,000 in the Red, White, and Win giveaway. Head to extrasports1300.com to enter this national contest for your chance to Red, White, and Win $5,000. Sponsored locally by Colorado Salt Cave Wellness Center, Mind, Body, Balance. Despite my best efforts, the voting yesterday for our first semifinal in the GOAT of GOATs tournament did not go the way that I had hoped, as Muhammad Ali got 57% of the vote over Wayne Gretzky, so he will await the winner of today's matchup, which is another doozy. In one corner, if I can stick with the boxing part of this, Muhammad Ali to boxing. In one corner, you have Michael Jordan. He is a 6-time NBA champion. He is a 5-time MVP, and he is a 10-time scoring champion. He also starred in Space Jam. Tiger Woods is in the other corner. He is a 13-time major champion, 82 career PGA wins in total, and 683 weeks as the number one player in the world, which is 13 years worth of weeks. Michael Jordan was only a reigning MVP for less than half of those weeks. And he was an NBA champion for less than 683 weeks. Less than half of 683 weeks, if my math is correct. So he's got that over Michael. But Tiger never three-peated any major, although he won every major a bunch and defended his title successfully multiple occasions, but never three-peated. But that's not what I'm basing this on. If you really dig into this, they are extremely similar in a lot of different ways. Right? How dominant they were, how much winning they did, and even their influence on the sport that they participated in was very similar. A generation of people picked up a golf club because of Tiger Woods, and a generation of people picked up a basketball because of Michael. Trying to be like those two guys. They both helped shepherd in an era of growth and popularity that their respective sports had never seen. It's that, hey, they both were guests on the Oprah Winfrey Show, which is a height of superstardom that I don't think can be minimized. And then, of course, both have their vices. Not taking shots, just pointing out. They're pretty similar in their impact on the important things, on their impact on the game, their dominance. Different sports, right? You're always making an apples to oranges comparison, but the best you can normalize it. It's not that different. But I think where Jordan separates himself is how he's bled into other sports with the Jordan brand. Right? Michael Jordan is not just basketball's GOAT. Like, he's held up as a GOAT for athletes in different sports. They don't even look, there are baseball players that don't try to become the next Babe Ruth, but they want to be like Mike. It's a nice ring to that. Maybe somebody should use that for a marketing campaign of some sort. But he was an idol. He was a GOAT for athletes in all different sports as kind of this standard of greatness and competitive nature. Everyone talks about the Mamba mentality, but where do you think Kobe got the Mamba mentality from? It was the Jordan mentality. He modeled his everything after Jordan. He's the closest thing to Jordan we have ever had. But again, it's not just basketball players. It's athletes across different sports that idolize Michael Jordan, that try to take whatever they can from Michael Jordan and apply it to a different sport. And I know with Muhammad Ali, I tried to say, can't quite, at some point, I can't use the ultimate trump card of what he did out of the ring. Right? Because I just think at a certain point, there are resumes that are so much better than even Ali's was in boxing. And making it about the sport first and foremost. And I know a lot of Michael, and even what I say when he's bled into other sports with the Jordan brand and being like Mike and all that kind of stuff, is kind of going a little bit outside of that. But I think it's still in the sports realm, right? And that's what we're talking about, sports goats. And because Muhammad Ali, as a boxer, was good enough to win a lot of the matchups he had. Right? So it wasn't always just about, what he did outside of the ring. And look, despite my pleadings, Ali won. So I guess I shouldn't fight it. I'm going to go with Jordan. It is quite remarkable how similar their impacts on their respective sports are. But I think Jordan. And those polls are posted now on our social media platforms at Extra Sports 1300, Facebook, X, and Instagram. And hey, how about a tiebreaker of basketball is more popular than golf, at least as a spectator, from a spectator point of view. But vote how you wish, and based on your own set of criteria, that's what this is all about. The GOAT with the higher vote total will face Muhammad Ali tomorrow, and we'll have that discussion, whether it be MJ or Tiger, that ends up going against Muhammad Ali in the finale of our GOAT of GOATs tournament. Appreciate the interaction and all the voting that you've done over the course of this tournament over the last few weeks. 719-247-1313 is the number to interact with the show. Coming up next, I am going to go a little Brian Windhorst on you, but I don't nearly have the sources that he does. But there's something about the Nuggets right now and their silence that is absolutely deafening. And it's led me down a path, and I have come up with a theory. I'm going to float it to you. Coming up next on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in, Drive Time Sports. Ryan Kaufman with you on this Tuesday. Glad to have you. If you'd like to chat, 719-247-1313. You can also find me on the social media platform known as X, at Gingerly Tweets. You can even watch the show while you're there, if you so choose. So last hour brought up the latest move by the Colorado Avalanche, signing Eric Brandstrom. And you just look right now, Avs versus Nuggets, and the Avalanche are far ahead of the Nuggets in terms of their moves. And I get it, they have more roster spots to fill, but what we're comparing it to is DeAndre Jordan. That's the move that the Nuggets have made. It's DeAndre Jordan. Setting aside the draft, and even then, of course, the Avalanche got many more players than the Nuggets did in their draft. But I'm saying since free agent, and DeAndre Jordan wasn't even when free agency opened. Right? They send out Reggie Jackson, so they don't add. They send out Reggie Jackson, they retain DeAndre Jordan, and they let KCP walk. That is not near as much activity as the Avalanche, and it's not moving the Nuggets right now in a good direction. So when they're just not even, there's not even room. There was the Russell Westbrook thing, but now maybe it's died down because he opted in, and that's a barrier by some people's estimation in getting him, is that they didn't want him to opt in. We'll see what happens there. But it's been very quiet for the Denver Nuggets while an arms race is going on around them. Right? Across the NBA, look at the number of moves that have been made. Yes, the Nuggets don't need to make as many moves as some of these others, but they're making zero moves. They're doing next to nothing since free agency opened. And when you are silent, Calvin Booth didn't even meet with the media yesterday when Deron Holmes was introduced. It was the assistant GM. Where's Calvin Booth? What is Calvin Booth doing? So when you are silent, we still get together and we still chat, right? Like, we're going to continue to discuss the Denver Nuggets. And if they're not doing anything, then we will fill that vacuum of silence with our own thoughts. And I had a few today. Like to share them with you. So a lot of the talk around the Denver Nuggets is about the second apron and their adversity, at least it appears their adversity, to going over that. But as I explained, you can still retain your own free agents and you could still sign your own draft picks being over the second apron, which are two of the biggest priorities of the Denver Nuggets, right? They want to keep the good that they have, and the way they're going to supplement the roster is through the draft. You could still do that over the second apron. So setting aside the Kroenke's adversity to maybe paying the punitive luxury tax that comes along with that, setting that aside, I think absolutely that's probably a part of it. But let's just look at it from Calvin Booth's job. Okay, let's say that optimistically the Kroenkes are willing to pay the luxury tax that would come along with the second apron for the right players. The thing that the second apron hampers is Calvin Booth's ability to make trades. So I can't help but feel like the Nuggets purposefully allowed KCP to walk because they're trying to make a deal. Now, they were rumored last week to have engaged in conversations with the Clippers surrounding Paul George. Those talks reportedly fell apart because the Clippers wanted too many draft picks from the Denver Nuggets. Think that was the only trade that they were thinking about? I doubt it. If Calvin Booth is working on something, I think it's a trade because free agency for many intents and purposes, if not all of them, is over. Save for one guy who I'll talk about here shortly. But we had the free agent rush. Like everybody who's anybody has already signed up, except for the one guy that I'm going to mention. So all that's really out there for the Nuggets to do is make trades. I think they are not done trying to move Michael Porter's contract. That's what I think Calvin Booth is working on, and that's why I think there has been very little to nothing going on with the Denver Nuggets since free agency opened. Now, what they get in return, we could view as good or bad. Right? And if something does end up happening, we can judge that as we do every move that the Denver Nuggets make. But if there is an adversity to being over the second luxury tax threshold, is it really $10 million that you want to be under? Or do you want to be under a few bucks more? How much flexibility do you think that the Nuggets want to have? And everyone looks at the Michael Porter contract and says, that's not aging great. And now that you've already conceded you are no longer the best starting five in basketball, it's like, well, now we can rethink the entire thing. Because when you had that mantle, that's worth keeping everyone together. When you don't have that mantle, then, I don't know, open everything up for discussion. I think that the Nuggets would like to move on from Michael Porter's contract and create more flexibility. Now, what did they do in order to do that? Is there another Paul George-like deal available to them? There's not a Paul George deal available to him. He's in Philadelphia. I don't know if there is a move with Michael Porter that can make you think that the Nuggets are better right now. But the Nuggets may try to sell you on the idea that they will be better moving forward because of the flexibility they have gained. I think that's what they're up to. Brian Windhorst asked the question the other day during ESPN's free agency special. Says, why hasn't Jamal Murray signed his deal yet? His extension yet? Do I think that it's some unhappiness on Jamal Murray's part? That would be quite the leap, in my opinion, considering that all the Nuggets have done every step of Jamal's career is backed him and supported him and paid him. I don't believe that Jamal Murray is unhappy with the Denver Nuggets. So I look at it and say either it just hasn't been done yet, which is possible, or Jamal Murray, with, I believe, a more lucrative extension available to him if he were to either be named to the All-Star team or first-time All-NBA, first-team All-NBA or All-NBA. I believe those things are still available to him, which would up the value of his contract. Even in a contract year, I think you can still qualify for that, yes? So it could be him betting on himself to try and get one of those things to get a more lucrative deal. Or option C is that the Nuggets are trying to take care of a significant piece of business before they lock in Jamal Murray. And I would lean towards the third thing. Because I would think that Jamal Murray, even if a more lucrative extension would be available to him if he were to make the All-Star game or All-NBA this year, I think with his history, putting pen to paper on an extension and long-term financial safety would be preferred. Now, I'm not saying that the Nuggets end up getting any of this done. I'm just theorizing what they're working on, what they're trying to do. So I cooked up a little something. See what you think about this. Michael Porter to Cleveland for Jarrett Allen and George Niang. The Cleveland Cavaliers just re-upped Donovan Mitchell. Okay, and now he and Darius Garland are in a backcourt together, both ball-dominant guards. So when you have two ball-dominant guards, the best thing that you can have are shooters. Michael Porter's a shooter. And then the other roster flaw, if you want to call it that the Cleveland Cavaliers have, I think it's a good problem because these are both talented players. But I think it would be best if Cleveland move Evan Mobley to the center spot that is currently inhabited by Jarrett Allen. And I don't think there's room in Cleveland for the both of them. And Jarrett Allen only has a couple of years left on his contract. So in completing this move, you would get a legit, I'm talking really legit backup center for Nikola Jokic, which may not sit well with Jarrett Allen, but he's not choosing to come to Denver via free agency. He's getting traded. It's not really up to him. Nuggets get a legit backup center in Jarrett Allen, and they get a guy that can knock down shots with the second unit with George Niang. You then move Peyton Watson into the starting five, not Christian Brown, more on that in a moment, to replace Michael Porter. And you get longer-term flexibility because Niang's not going to be in your future plans, and Jarrett Allen probably will go and cash in someplace. I don't know if Cleveland's going to go for that deal, but I'm putting in a bunch of trades in the trade machine. It is very difficult to trade Michael Porter. It just is. Right? And that's why you could have a fair amount of pessimism that they're actually going to be able to get this done, because that's a very big contract and a lot of teams are up against one luxury tax apron or another. But it would work financially. It would give them flexibility, and it would address at least one need that they still have on their roster. But now that kind of trade would create, your starting five would be much less than it was. Already, you're going in the wrong direction by letting Kentavious Caldwell-Pope walk, and now you're giving up Michael Porter Jr., and you're not getting a starter in return, or at least a guy that would be a starter for you. This is where the news of the day comes in. DeMar DeRozan. according to Adrian Wojnarowski, is willing, or at least entertaining the possibility of being willing, to take a 1-year deal somewhere in order to go back into the free agent pool next season. How would you like DeMar DeRozan on the Denver Nuggets? We're not talking about as good of a fit as Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in that starting five, which is an underrated part of the starting five that was so good, is because the best thing to put around Nikola Jokic and that two-man game between he and Murray are shooters. And DeMar DeRozan is a good mid-range shooter, not really a three-point shooter, and there wouldn't be as much spacing. But as a talent, DeMar DeRozan would be not just as good as KCP, he'd be an upgrade. And you get him for a 1-year deal, and who knows? Right? I understand the Nuggets need to look out for the future, but under my circumstance, they are looking out for the future. But you got to look out for the present as well. I don't know if the current, because I know the logical question, well, can't they just fit him in? They could, but right now they have about $16.5 million under the second apron. If you bring in DeRozan right now, don't trade Porter, keep everything the same, and just bring in DeRozan. I wouldn't hate that, except look at what the bench would be, and now you wouldn't have, your mid-level exceptions and all those other things that you could potentially move in order to bring in guys. You'd be vet minimum. Well, now Russell Westbrook is not a vet minimum guy. So we'd be looking at the starting five and say, okay, maybe you'd rather have Kentavious Caldwell-Pope from a fit perspective and have him under contract for multiple years, but you get a pretty talented player in DeMar DeRozan that you would not have probably had otherwise. Only this circumstance of no one biting for DeMar DeRozan that maybe now you can go to him. I still think that the Nuggets would need to create some flexibility, and we'd be looking at their bench and saying their bench is still really bad, because it would be Jalen Pickett, Julian Strawther, Christian Brown, Deron Holmes, and, Peyton Watson. So I do think that the Nuggets are trying to create flexibility, or at least trying to move Porter's contract. Now, I like the trade last week much better because you get an upgrade over Michael Porter. But it's hard for me to find a similar trade out there where you would say that the Nuggets were getting a better player in than Michael Porter. And most players that are better than Michael Porter are going to command more money than Michael Porter. And doesn't that defeat the entire purpose of what the Nuggets are trying to do? Which appears to be staying under the second luxury tax apron. But this feels weird. Just the fact that the Nuggets have been so, like the Avalanche are in a bigger cap predicament than the Denver Nuggets, and they're making a ton of moves. Different sports, I understand that. But look what's going on across the NBA. And the Nuggets have DeAndre Jordan back in the fold. They gave away Reggie Jackson for nothing. And they let KCP walk. That's been their free agency. That's too quiet. That's too idle. There has to be something. I don't know if you're going to like it or you're going to hate it, but there's got to be something. And if it's taking this long, if they're missing out on all of this activity, to me, that means it's something that is going to be newsworthy one way or another. Maybe not franchise altering like the Paul George deal would have been, but something that is of some significance. And I can't help but think that has to do with Michael Porter. But we'll see. 719-247-1313. So I guess, why aren't the Nuggets doing anything? That's question one. Question two is, would you take DeMar DeRozan? And then how do you reconcile those two things? 719-247-1313. Coming up next, the first poll of the new Big 12 is out for the upcoming football season. It is the media poll. And if you are a Buffs fan, you may think that you should be upset, but I actually think you should be thrilled with where the Big 12 media placed the Colorado Buffaloes. I'll explain next. Speaking of that match between the Switchbacks and Tulsa Thursday night, it's also the Switchbacks 4th of July Star-Spangled Fireworks Spectacular, the most immersive fireworks show in the state of Colorado. You're going to want to be there at 5 to get a special Switchbacks light-up baton provided by Pikes Peak National Bank. Now, I would like to send you there. Not on my dime, because I quite frankly don't make enough money. But I'd like to give you tickets. I do have tickets. I have 4 tickets, and I would like to give them to you to take your family, your friends, your coworkers, random people you meet on the street. I don't care what you do with them, as long as you're there watching the Switchbacks take on FC Tulsa on Thursday. 4 tickets to the 13th texter at 719-247-1313 to text Switchbacks and their name. If you do not win, the best place for you to go, and I would do so sooner rather than later, given how quickly tickets are being sold, is to go to switchbacksfc.com. The media poll for this new Big 12 season that looks kind of like the old Big 12 in a lot of different ways, including Colorado, it just came out today. And if you are a Buffs fan, you were probably surprised, if not a little perturbed, that the media voted the Buffaloes 11th in the Big 12, which, just as a point of clarification, is not second to last place because the Big 12 has more than 12 teams in it. But it's not very high, right? And the feeling around Boulder in this program is that this was going to be a significant year. There's been chatter from certain people that go by the name Coach Prime that the Buffaloes will be competing for the college football playoff, if not outright saying they would be in it. Well, you can't go to the college football playoff if you're the 11th best team in your own conference. So this throws a bit of cold water on some of the excitement going on for this upcoming Buff season. But I will tell you, being a voter in preseason media polls, not to ignore them, okay? There are people that put work into it. I understand that you are looking into a crystal ball and things happen and you look back and you go, whoa, boy. I understand that the order of finish that they are predicting probably isn't going to be the order of finish, but they put work into it. They put thought behind it. They don't just pull names out of a hat. Okay, so this is an accurate representation about the way people who cover the conference feel about the Buffaloes and what they will do this upcoming season. You could disagree with it, but it's what they believe. And it seems like a lot of Big 12 media members aren't buying the hype. I am here to tell you this is good. This is good. Because I don't think that the Colorado Buffaloes are going to win the Big 12 and go to the college football playoff. I just don't. But this can be plastered all over the walls of the Buffs locker room, of their meeting rooms, all over the CU Boulder campus. I liked the Buffs better when everyone was doubting them. When everybody was doubting Coach Prime. That was the beginning of the season. And then it got a little out of hand. Expectation came around, and they fell woefully short of that expectation once Pac-12 play began. How they are predicted to finish in the Big 12 probably doesn't change much until the Big 12 season starts. I think that's good news. I want this team with the chip on their shoulder. This team is not at the point where they shouldn't be viewed as favorites, but it's better for them if they're not. Right? And it puts them in a position to exceed expectation. It gives Coach Prime a chance to beat his chest and say, no one's believing in us, to motivate these guys, to fundraise. This is actually a good thing. You don't want expectations to take off in Boulder. So it's perfectly fine that they are 11th. Do I think they will be 11th? No, I don't. I think that they are being undervalued by quite a bit. They also voted today, same people, that Shedeur Sanders is the best quarterback in that conference. Last time I checked, quarterback is the most important position in football. And in college football, it is everything, right? If you have the best quarterback, you're probably going to win, right? Most of the time. Okay, there are extenuating circumstances. If you have a line that can't block or what have you, then okay. But normally when you have the best quarterback, you're going to win the game. And those same media members that voted the Buffs 11th in the Big 12 also think that they have the best quarterback in the conference. And the Colorado Buffaloes just spent the entire transfer portal getting him better offensive linemen, which was a major issue last year. There is no way I could be just as confident, more so, actually. I am more confident that the Buffs will not finish 11th. Their standing in the Big 12 will not be a double digit. I am more confident of that than I am saying they won't win the Big 12. They are being quite underrated here in a conference that is not the SEC. They're not even the Pac-12 of last year, even though they have a fair amount of Pac-12 teams from last year, as it were. If I were voting in this poll, I'd probably have the Buffs 5th or 6th. Because essentially what you're saying, based on the teams that the Buffs actually have on their schedule, and it's not everybody in the Big 12, that they will only win 2 games in conference play. They will beat Baylor at home, and they will beat Cincinnati at home. They don't play BYU. They don't play Houston. They don't play Arizona State. 2 wins in this Big 12, there's no way. There's just no way. This Buffs team is going to flirt with the top 5 of this conference. That's where I have them. They're ranked below TCU. Think about that. TCU is ranked ahead of Colorado. Did they not just play last year? And I'm not saying TCU didn't get better, but the Buffs got better. The Buffs got better. I know they did. I know they'll be better than they were last year. And they're ranked below a team that they beat despite how flawed their roster was last year. I don't know what moves TCU made, but just that alone, the barrier to CU being in the top 10 seems a little ridiculous. Texas Tech, UCF, West Virginia, Iowa State. The Buffs could be better than all of them. Now, I don't think they're better than Utah or Kansas State or Oklahoma State or Kansas. But I think everybody else, I put their ceiling at 5. And I don't even know that I could put their floor at 11, let alone make that my prediction. So, yes, I fully expect us to look back at the preseason poll and say, what is this nonsense? But this is good. This is good. We're still early in the Coach Prime era. We don't want, and it's fine if Coach Prime is the one that's running his mouth and saying all this stuff. That's fine, right? That can be dismissed. That could be, but when people that cover the game start believing in that, then that places those expectations, and that's not what you want. This is still a growing process. We're still early in this. Keeping expectations relatively low is not a bad thing. And it will serve as motivation to the Colorado Buffaloes that despite having the best quarterback in the conference, they're only projected to finish 11th. Take your thoughts on it, though. 719-247-1313. Also, Travis Hunter got some preseason accolades, as you might expect. If that's the expectation level, I think you will be pleasantly surprised as a Buffs fan what this team will do, because they're not going to be the 11th best team in the Big 12. 719-247-1313. Take a break. Have more Drive Time Sports after this. The best pro rodeo cowboys and cowgirls from the U.S. and Canadian circuits, plus national champions from Mexico, are coming to Colorado Springs July 9th. That's a week from today. They'll be here through the 13th with over $1 million in payouts. They'll be riding to win. This is where champions and careers are made. The speed, the excitement. There's no better place to be than the NFR Open at the Pikes Peak or Bust Rodeo. Get your tickets now at pikespeakorbust.org. Congratulations to Evany. I hope I'm saying the name right. Won the 4-pack of tickets to the Switchbacks match on the 4th of July. You know, an interesting conversation has kind of come up over the past couple of days as free agency has begun, and it's happening both in the NHL and the NBA. Regarding Steven Stamkos on the hockey side and Klay Thompson on the NBA side. What is owed to someone that has meant a lot to an organization? Because clearly Klay Thompson has felt incredibly disrespected by the Golden State Warriors over the past year or so, in leading to him wanting out. Wouldn't even hear out their pitch. Took meetings with Clippers, Lakers, Philly, Dallas. Ended up choosing Dallas. And all the Warriors get in return are a couple of second-round picks. But don't worry, they went out and got Kyle Anderson today. So that's good. More than the Nuggets have brought into their roster. I'll at least say that much. And then you have Steven Stamkos, who is lowballed by anybody's measure by the Tampa Bay Lightning, so the Lightning could go out and get Jake Gensel, and Stamkos ends up going to Nashville. And I find it to be a very interesting debate because I don't think it's so black and white as you deserve only the contract, right? They paid you all the money of your contract. That's not what it is, and that's not what we wish it would be. Right? We could talk about a business being cold all we want, but when you mean a lot to that particular company, it's not, and none of this is about, hey, Klay Thompson should get paid a max contract. If anybody's suggesting that, then they're insane. Okay? Nor is it that Steven Stamkos deserves more money than Jake Gensel. Jake Gensel's a better player. It's not about that. But you would think if you were a key member of a dynasty, maybe the last dynasty in NBA history, that you get a little something extra. I don't know if Klay was done as dirty as Tampa did to Steven Stamkos. The Warriors did pay Klay Thompson a lot of money while he was hurt. Okay, Stamkos is diminished a bit as a player, but he's been out there. He helped them go to a Stanley Cup final not that long ago. I don't know if it's monetary. Really, what I'm talking about. It's not a gift contract. But like a line of communication, a bit of, like, it just seemed like from the outside looking in that Tampa gave Steven Stamkos a take it or leave it deal. And that was it. With the Golden State Warriors, it feels like they did more. Right? They're not the same situation. They ended up the same. They're viewed similarly. But I feel like the Warriors did quite a bit more for Klay Thompson in the end than the Lightning did for Steven Stamkos. It is true that all you are owed by your employer is what your contract or employment agreement says you're entitled to. But it's about the treatment. It's about the way you leave and how they let you leave. That I think is what is certainly lacking in Tampa's case and maybe lacking a little bit in Klay Thompson's case. I just think he was miffed about things long ago. I think it was always building towards this because they invested in Draymond to a huge deal. Andrew Wiggins, Jordan Poole, like the number of guys that got paid, I could understand would perturb Klay Thompson a little bit. I'm not saying that the Warriors chose wrong. Well, for Jordan Poole, maybe. But I don't have a problem with them not paying Klay Thompson a massive contract or offering him whatever they offered in the end. Because, again, I do think that the Warriors tried to do it the right way, whatever that might be, right? I think they tried to bring him back. I think Tampa didn't want Steven Stamkos back. And I think there was at least the desire for the Golden State Warriors to have Klay Thompson back. I mean, look at what they've done. Again, they brought in Kyle Anderson today. It's not like the Warriors have these big, huge, grandiose plans that Klay Thompson would mess up. Right? They wanted him back. But they wanted him back at a certain number that would be commensurate with what he was as a player and what they could afford. And the fact that miffed Klay Thompson, that's where I'm like, I understand where he's coming from, but I'm on the Warriors' side here. It just feels like the Lightning didn't want Stamkos back, and they did things that would make him not want to come back. That they knew he wouldn't want to come back. And maybe the Warriors, in some part of their mind, thought that Klay was gone no matter what. But at least they tried. It didn't feel like Tampa tried. They lowballed him, and then they went out and traded for Jake Gensel, put all their energy into that. And Steven Stamkos said something about this yesterday when he met with the Nashville media. Like, it's tough. He said something to the degree of it's tough to hang on to something that the other person or the other party isn't hanging on to, right? Like, he wanted to finish his career in Tampa. He wanted to be a Lightning for life, a Bolt for life. And he wanted to keep the band together and all that kind of stuff, and they wanted to go in a different direction. But it just seemed like on the way out, they kind of said, well, here's an offer, whatever. Take it or leave it. We're going to go call Carolina and try to get Jay Gensel. But it is an interesting topic. What is owed to an athlete that has meant a ton to an organization? And I just, where I come down on it again is just the way you treat them. If you are done with them, they deserve a little bit more than the Moneyball, that scene from Moneyball. Just sit them down and give them the facts. Not when somebody has spent more than a decade, not with your team, not when somebody has helped you win a lot. They deserve a little bit more. It feels like there wasn't that in Tampa, and there was in Golden State, and it was just all these other things that the Warriors had done over the years were leading Klay to this point. And then a lot of people will talk about this being the end of the Warrior dynasty. I would argue that it was done a while ago. Right? That championship that they won They probably shouldn't have. Not because they weren't good enough, but it's just a lot of it was different, and it was just kind of this unbelievable one last championship performance from Steph Curry that allowed them to win it. It was probably done before that. It's kind of like the Patriots, right? When they lost to Mike Vrabel and the Titans, that was really the end. And what just cemented it was when Brady left to Tampa. Kind of the same thing with the Warriors. Clay leaving is not the end of the Warrior dynasty. The end of the Warrior dynasty was probably before that, when they became a team not good enough to win anymore. But it will be bizarre to see Klay Thompson in a Mavericks jersey. That's for sure. And I don't know what the Warriors are going to do. I know a lot of focus here locally is how the Nuggets are messing this offseason up or not doing anything. How do they feel in Golden State? They had a dynasty. And they get Kyle Anderson to essentially replace Klay Thompson. So Nuggets aren't alone. There are other fan bases that may not be thrilled with the free agency period for their respective teams. Coming up next, hour 3 of Drive Time Sports, which we will lead off with the 3 stories that are driving this show. Welcome in, Drive Time Sports. Ryan Kaufman with you on this glorious Tuesday in Colorado Springs. You may not be listening just in Colorado Springs because we have an app that is available all over the place, and it is 100% free. So if you're listening on that or you're listening on your radio here in Colorado Springs, I certainly do appreciate your patronage. If you'd like to interact with the show, you could do so on the text line or the phone line. The number is the same for your convenience. It is 719-247-1313. Let's start off the hour as we tend to do with the three stories that are driving the show. All right, here is story number one.
You felt like this team didn't perform well and could perform better. The decision's not up to you as to whether you continue, but do you believe that you still are the right voice, the right person with this group to push it forward ahead of the 26th World Cup and into the 26th World Cup?
Yes.
That is a question posed to Greg Berhalter, the head coach of the U.S. men's national team. He didn't hesitate. If he had hesitated for even like a split second, maybe your hopes would have been up that he would have said, no, and I'm resigning. But that didn't happen. U.S. Soccer is going to have to fire him. And they should. And this is not about, like, look, you don't like people losing their jobs. And this is probably a dream job for Greg Berhalter. Okay? But this happens in sports. It's the life you signed up for. And if you are not the right guy, then you will be replaced. I'm sure there is an MLS team that would be gladly hire Greg Berhalter the moment he gets fired by the U.S. men's national team. Okay, he'll find other work. But this is the most important soccer job in our country. And once again, last night, as it has been through 3 matches of the Copa America, Greg Berhalter does not look like the right guy to lead this team into a massive moment for this sport in this country, and that being the World Cup. He's not the right guy. And there are other factors at play here. Right? As talented as this group is, they do seem to spend more time trying to retaliate or yell at referees than they spend trying to attack and score goals. Okay, I'm not saying this team is perfect and bring in a new head coach and they're going to win the World Cup. But they're nowhere close to competing. Why? Based on what you have seen, how could you possibly think the World Cup's going to go any better? And the players can say all they want, that they would run through a wall for him and they like him and they like the direction they are going. They're not going in a direction. It's only backwards if they are going in a direction at all. But I see no forward momentum from this team. I don't see this team improving based on, even if you didn't watch them between the last World Cup and now, just take the World Cup and now. Does it look like they're better? No. And U.S. Soccer needs to look at a coach that's not going to just go along with the way they do business. They need to bring in somebody that can honestly assess what is going on, the roster, the way they develop, the way they train, everything, and be able to say, this isn't right. This is how you go. There are reports out there that Uruguay's coach wanted the gig, but was told he couldn't have it because he had to speak English. I don't know. Reports are reports, but you can't tell me there's not a more decorated, better head coach out there than Greg Berhalter. I didn't believe that there wasn't when they brought him back. There has to be. And if you got to make the monetary part of it happen, then you do it. Show that you're serious about competing to the absolute best of your ability, because we didn't see even close to that over these last 3 matches. In fact, even the first one wasn't that good. It just, last night was another borderline embarrassing effort on home soil, and it ended in an embarrassing loss that should cost someone their job. I get it. I have bloodlust that needs to be satisfied. I'll admit it. It is inexcusable that the team, not just that they bowed out when they did, but the way they looked on their way out. If it's any other sport, this conversation would be happening, and I bet you that a coach would lose his job. LeBron fires coaches for less than Greg Berhalter has done. Like, come on. They have to move on, and maybe we are valuing the players, but I don't think we can properly assess how good this team is with Greg Berhalter as the head coach. I just don't think we can. We need a coach that's going to get the best out of this team, and then we can assess. The USSF is saying that they're going to evaluate blah. Probably the same thing they said after the World Cup, and they eventually landed on Greg Berhalter. I feel like he fits what they like to do. He probably doesn't make too many waves, just wants to coach. And maybe there are some things inside U.S. soccer that need to be changed. And a better, more experienced, more worldly head coach would point out those things, and maybe they don't want that. I don't want to go too deep into conspiracy theories here. I'll just keep it at the surface and say, Greg Berhalter, this is an unacceptable result on a major tournament played on your home turf. And there is nothing in Greg Berhalter's on his resume. We got to stop looking at wins against Mexico as the bar here. If we're saying that he should be fired, the burden is on U.S. soccer. When they come back from this wilderness retreat or juice cleanse or ayahuasca retreat, whatever it is that they're going to go on and assess, when they come back, the burden is on them to convince us that he's the right guy, because they sure as heck did not do a good enough job of it when they brought him back after the World Cup. He's not the guy. He's always been the guy before the guy. I don't know how many times I have to utter that phrase when it comes to Greg Berhalter. At some point, you got to get the guy. Greg Berhalter's not that guy. What better time to do it? You're going to wait till after the World Cup and they fizzle out? Do it now. There's nothing stopping you, and there's nothing that Greg Berhalter has done that would lead you to believe that this team's going to be better in the World Cup. Story number 2 today is that the Avalanche have made another move, not a significant one, but one that I think should please you if you are an Avs fan, because they have done something like this many times over, and it almost always works. They have signed defenseman Eric Brandstrom to a 1-year deal worth less than $1 million. He will be one of the 2 defensemen on the third Avs pairing. But what he has in common with many other acquisitions over the years for the Avs is that he was a highly thought of prospect that was taken in the first round of the draft and did not work in his previous location, which was Ottawa. He was drafted by Vegas, but was quickly moved when Vegas acquired Mark Stone. Didn't work out in Ottawa. Just like Valeri Nichushkin didn't work out in Dallas, Andrei Burakovsky didn't work out in Washington, and the list goes on. The Avs have a knack for bringing in these guys and making them into something. It's a credit to Jared Bednar, and it's a credit to the fact that the Avs are a very talented team, and you have the opportunity to play with more talented players when you go to the Colorado Avalanche. It's not better than if they would have retained Sean Walker. But again, the cap is the cap. But I think with Brandstrom and DeHaan, you have a chance to actually have a better third pairing than you did last year. And Sean Walker, like we didn't even that's projecting. You only had him for a half of a year. But I like this move. And Chris McFarland continues to make good moves, re-signing Middlestat, bringing back Drouin, now bringing in Brandstrom, these deals that aren't the most important things like Landeskog and Nichushkin, but they're the things he can get done now, and I think he's doing a good job to fortify the Avs as much as he can until he can actually do something about Valeri Nichushkin and Gabriel Landeskog. Story number 3, if you are thinking that maybe all the big name NBA players are already on new teams, think again. DeMar DeRozan, most recently of the Chicago Bulls, reportedly, because he hasn't gotten a deal to his liking in the free agent market, would be willing to potentially take a 1-year deal to then re-enter the free agent pool next year. Now, DeRozan isn't as good of a fit with the Denver Nuggets as Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was, and that's part of why I thought it was a mistake that they let him go. But as a talent, probably better than KCP. They have less than $17 million until they hit that dreaded second luxury tax apron. I don't know that 16.7 gets it done, and then can the Nuggets even improve their bench after that? That's why I think that they've been working on something that will free up more money. Maybe it's something as small as Zeke not moving Zeke Naji. Maybe it's something as big as moving Michael Porter. But I think they're trying to create even more flexibility one way or another. But just as a thought exercise, as a fit, as an upgrade, I think DeMar DeRozan would look pretty good in a Nuggets uniform, even if it was just for 1 year. And then who knows what happens after that. We do treat athletes very well in this state. Maybe it wouldn't be just for 1 year. But for 1 year, if that's what he's willing to do, maybe even take less money to do it, having a chance to win a ring certainly boosts your value for the next free agency period. Feels like the Nuggets, if this report is true, that DeMar DeRozan is open to taking a 1-year deal, the Nuggets should probably do most everything in their power to make sure that 1-year deal is in Denver. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the 3 stories that are driving the show, and we'll continue with the show after this. The Rocky Mountain State Games is Colorado's largest sports festival with over 12,000 athletes competing in nearly 40 different sports. Registration open now for athletes of all ages and skill levels. Learn more at RockyMountainStateGames.org. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard Bronny James speak? Everyone else does so much talking for him. ESPN personalities, LeBron, Rich Paul. You may not have heard Bronny ever speak. Well, today, along with Dalton Connect, he was introduced as one of the Lakers draft picks. And he spoke. And here's what he sounded like and said.
Yeah, everything's just been surreal. Just trying to take it all in by the days. Extremely, grateful for everything that JJ and Rob have given to me. And I've just been extremely excited to get to work.
So that's what he sounds like. He went on to say a couple of things that I have to speak on. First, he said he had no thought of playing with his dad. Okay, first of all, that's ridiculous. Not once. I'm not talking about like as we're leading up to the draft. He's hoping. I'm not even saying he's hoping to play with him or anything. Not once. Did you ever entertain the idea of playing with your dad? Of course you did. How could you not? Your dad is an NBA player. You're going to his games. You're coming up on an age where you could play in the NBA. You expect to play in the NBA. You want to play in the NBA. It doesn't enter your mind about playing with your dad. It's not even about wanting to play with him. You just never thought about it. Even if he would have said, I thought about it and I actually didn't want to do it, I would be like, okay, that's honest. Appreciate the honesty. Of course he thought about playing with his dad. But here's the problem. Because of the position he has been put in, he has to say ridiculous things that aren't true in order to fight against the narrative that he's only there because of his dad. It is okay for him to say, I thought about playing with my dad. It would be cool to play with my dad. And I actually kind of hate it, to be honest. I hate the fact that he can't say that. Because it is cool that Bronny will get to play with his father. How is that not cool? We've seen it in other sports. It's a cool thing. And I hate that Bronny can't even say that because of everything that has happened up until now. And again, this goes to the situation that he has been put in by his father and his representation. Can't even admit he's excited to play with his dad, or he always wanted to play with his dad. It's okay if Bronny says he wants to play with his dad. And it's even okay if LeBron says he wants to play with his son, but that's not where it stopped. It wasn't just sentiment. It became, well, he wants the Lakers to take him, and it's part of why he will stay in LA. Is if they have Bronny, and then he tried to distance himself from it and all that. You know the story by now. I hate that he can't just admit that he thought about it and that he's looking forward to it. And then, of course, he's asked questions about deserving to be here. And I hate that even more. And he says that he's earned his way here. I don't know that I can agree with that. I would have liked for Bronny to be put up for anybody to draft. And if the Lakers happen to take him, yes, it would invite some of the same conversation, but we wouldn't know what we know. And hey, if Rich Paul didn't reportedly call a bunch of teams on the second day of the draft and said, don't take Bronny, maybe he could sit up there at a podium in Dallas or Minnesota or Denver or Boston or Philadelphia and say, I earned it. Because there would be questions about whether Bronny is being drafted because of his last name or his whole name, actually, because he's LeBron James Jr. There would be those questions. But because he went to LA and because Rich Paul willed it so with his actions and LeBron James put it into the universe, now we have more questions and we have a little bit more validity to ask that question. The best thing for Bronny, I truly believe, would have been just for him to be open to the draft for everybody, not be earmarked to the Lakers, not Rich Paul scaring away other teams that may have been interested. I would have just loved to see whether Bronny is actually worthy of being drafted into the NBA. But because he ends up with LA, we don't know. We can't know because there's all this other stuff with Rich Paul and LeBron that we know, and we know were a driving force behind him getting picked where he did and where he did. And he's going to have to keep answering these questions. And it's not fair to him. It would already be difficult enough being drafted into the NBA as LeBron James' son. The expectations that go along with that, the questions about whether he's only being drafted because of his father. He would already have to answer those. But there would be less validity to them because it's like, hey, LeBron James isn't going to Dallas, and Dallas drafted him. No promise of LeBron. Rich Paul didn't will it to happen, didn't scare away other teams. They drafted him of their own volition. And they said, this prospect is worth it. Because let's be honest, Bronny in any NBA city, even in LA, is not a draw. Right? So you can't make that argument. You can't make, drafting Bronny James is going to sell tickets. No, it's not. So that would have been the best thing. That would have given him his best chance to kind of carve out his own legacy. And I think that's what's best. And so you're left with either you're left with the idea that he's only in the league, let alone on the Lakers, both. Because of his father, and his father wanted it to happen. Not that it would be this neat story or, hey, guess what, LeBron, we happen to draft your son. Wow, how cool, how spontaneous. That and then none of this is, can't emphasize this enough. None of this is Bronny's fault. None of this. The only error that Bronny made was leaving USC. I do think that was a mistake. And that's not because of who he is being LeBron James' son. That's because how many other players have we seen go straight from high school to the NBA or 1 year of college into the NBA and they're not ready and they don't develop and they fizzle out and they're never heard from again. That's where his name could be John Smith, as Rich Paul intimated the other day. His name could be John Smith and he'd be in the NBA. Well, I don't know. But I do know that there have been John Smiths before that have come out too early, and it's been a huge mistake. And I do think it was a mistake for Bronny to leave USC. But as he always does, people around him doing him no favors, and he answered every question. Yes, he had to fib a little bit because he has to distance himself from the idea that he was a Nepo draft pick. But he stood up there and he answered him. He's a good guy. I don't know how you can't root for Bronny to succeed. Even more so, maybe. I think there are people that hope Bronny succeeds even more, and not because it would help the Lakers, but just because you want him to work. Because if he doesn't, oh my goodness, the trash that would be heaped on him. We'll see. I don't think anybody's doing Bronny any favors. Lakers, LeBron, Rich Paul, but he's a Laker now, and by the way, he will start the season with the Lakers. He's not even going to the G League. Another mistake by the people around him. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, your chance to win Pikes Peak or Bust rodeo tickets. The best pro rodeo cowboys and cowgirls from the U.S., Canada, and Mexico converge in our fair city July 9th through the 13th. And with over $1 million in payouts, they'll be riding to win. This is where champions and careers are made. The NFR Open at the Pikes Peak Bus Rodeo. And I want to send you there to check this all out. I have tickets for the last day, which is July 13th. If the date matters, if you're like, oh, I'm going to be out of town, then I don't have. These tickets aren't for you. Just in case, want to throw in the date, but it'll be July 13th. So if you'd like to go, I have a pair of tickets for the NFR Open at the Pikes Peak Bus Rodeo. You can text rodeo in your name to 719-247-1313, and the 13 texter will win those tickets to the Pikes Peak or Bust Rodeo. To that text line, by the by, if from the 719, if Bronny was just another Ronnie, he'd be wandering the summer leagues or Europe. Thanks, Dad. I think, look, there was a time where, Bronny's been assessed as a borderline draft pick. Right? That's the fairest assessment I have seen of him. Now, all it takes is one team to fall in love with you. Right? And you get drafted. It's only 2 rounds. But my thing is, we don't even know for sure. And I would have loved to know for sure. Because I look at Bronny as a prospect, and I'm like, I don't know if he's an NBA player at this point. So I'd like to see what other teams think. Well, we don't know because no other teams were allowed to draft Bronny. And the only team that did not draft him because of his upside. So it's like we don't even know what Bronny would be. I don't know if he would have been drafted. I mean, I think that's where I am, that my gut tells me he wouldn't have been drafted. And perhaps that is why Rich Paul did what he did and LeBron and everything like that. But you have liked to know. And I think at some level of Bronny would like to know. I mean, isn't there something in Bronny's mind where he's like, I'll just, in a moment of honesty, I suffer from imposter syndrome. Like, I just do. Okay? I deal with it every day. I don't know if Bronny suffers from it, but I got to imagine there's some quiet times over the last few days where Bronny's like, am I even in the league because I deserve to be? Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's so confident that doesn't even enter into his mind. And good for him if that's the case. But I got to imagine this whole circumstance has to at least put a bit of doubt. Did I make it here on my own merits? I don't know. I don't know what he was told by other teams. He didn't work out for anybody but Phoenix and LA. I just think the whole thing is. I don't like it. I don't like it for him. Like, Lakers, whatever. I don't feel bad for the Lakers that they feel like they have to do this. I don't even necessarily blame LeBron for wanting this. I just have a problem with I guess I have a problem with the Lakers kowtowing to him in this way. We'd love to sit here and say, no way, we'd Bill Gates, Warren Buffett this thing if we had influence that could place our children in their chosen profession, right? And Bill Gates and Warren Buffett are pretty famous for, not giving their kids anything. We'd love to think that we would be them. We'd probably be like LeBron. We'd probably exert any influence we had to get our kids hired. Right? So my whole thing with this is not that I blame LeBron for wanting this, or even to an extent blame LeBron for trying to force the Lakers to do this. But it was, I guess, the forcing them to do it on the threat of him leaving is a step too far. Like, if all LeBron did was go to the Lakers and say, hey, it would be awesome if you drafted my son, I'd really like it, and left it at that, or even said you should, I would like this. Heck, behind closed doors, he can even command it if he wants to. But how public it was, I think it is a problem. And forcing the Lakers' hand in some way in order to do it. But I don't blame the guy for wanting to set his son up. Okay? But that doesn't mean you can't screw it up. Parents screw up stuff all the time, wanting the absolute best for their kid and think that they're looking out for their kid. And I can't say if I was in LeBron James's shoes that I wouldn't certainly be in the ear of my boss and saying, hey, you should draft him. Can I convince you to draft him? Let me tell you why you should draft him. I don't blame any of that. And at the heart of this is a dad who loves his kid, who wants his kid to succeed, and wants to set him up to have a chance to do that. I think we can empathize with that line of thinking, but he went too far. Went too far, and it put his son in a bad position. And this story, this isn't going away. If he's really starting the season on the Laker bench, it's going to be a story for a while. If they send him to the G League, then it's out of sight, out of mind. Right? But if he's sitting there on that Laker bench, it is going to be a thing. And I don't know that that's good. I really don't. But what do I know? I don't have nearly the influence that LeBron James has, so I could never put my kid in the same position that LeBron is putting his kid in. But I don't think it's good. This story came out of left field today. Utah State, Mountain West rival of Air Force, has told their football coach, Blake Anderson, they're going to fire him. In an external investigation of alleged noncompliance of Title IX policies that require full and timely reporting of disclosures of sexual misconduct, including domestic violence. Apparently, they didn't think he did the right thing he should have reported something that he didn't. And now he's going to get fired for it. So we'll see where this goes. Usually these coaches don't accept these things and go, yep, I'll go away. You're right. Even if they're in the wrong, they usually put up a fight. So we'll see what comes of this. And this is beyond the point because I don't know what this is and how serious it is, serious enough for him to be fired. So I don't want to be flippant about it, but just as an aside, You just think about the turnover, the number of coaches that have come and gone through the Mount West, and the guy just north of here is just the constant. Just wins games, doesn't have the troubles that some of these other programs have. But another coach, it's not like Blake Anderson has been at Utah State forever, but another first-time head coach potentially being in on the Mount West schedule next year. So we'll see what comes of that. And then, of course, tonight, the main event, if you're watching sports this evening, Caitlin Clark against the Las Vegas Aces. The Dynastic Aces boasting the best player in the league, and Asia Wilson, and then, of course, the phenomenon known as Caitlin Clark. That's going to be a fun matchup. I'll be on ESPN tonight. A little bit of a late start, 7:30 if you are so inclined, which I am. So I'll report back my findings tomorrow if you don't get a chance to watch it. And a late note on DeMar DeRozan, as I can feel many Nuggets fans slowly putting all of their eggs into the DeMar DeRozan basket. At this point, with everything that has happened with the Nuggets offseason, about the only thing that will save it is if they land DeMar DeRozan. Chris Haynes had a note that maybe the sign and trade route's not happening, that he's just going to go and sign somewhere. Why not the Nuggets? Because they're not willing to go over the second apron. Answered my own question there, but we'll see. They have just less than $17 million before the second luxury tax apron. I hate this. I can't tell you how much I hate amateur capology. Like, there's some times where I find it interesting. This has been tedious. What does the second apron limit you on? What can you do? What can't you do? Okay, can you afford this? But if you do this. Again, I go back. Time will tell if this is for the best in the NBA. We're still too early. But all of these changes from Adam Silver, did he take it one step too far with the second apron? And let's not forget, too, that the owners agreed to this. This is an ownership-driven thing, or at least an ownership-supported thing. So it's not just about parity, but I do think Adam Silver does look at this and say, I want parity, and this will get me parity. And it has. And we're not even to the second apron yet. That's just now we're getting to this. So, yes, of course, this is also a cost control measure from the owners. But it's not been a good start to the offseason for the Denver Nuggets, save for the drafting of Deron Holmes. And we'll see if tomorrow brings something. Again, it just feels like they're working on something. To me, it just feels like there's something that they're trying to do that if we knew, we would have a strong opinion one way or another about. Not just moving. I mean, it could be moving Zeke Naji, and I'm sure they're trying to move Zeke Naji. I know they're trying to move Zeke Naji, but it feels like maybe they're cooking up something bigger. You may hate it. It may make the Nuggets even worse than they already are, having lost Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, but the silence, Calvin Booth not being at the introductory press conference of Deron Holmes, feels like he's hard at work at something. We'll see if we find out what it is and if it ultimately comes to fruition. Before I go, I would like to let you know about QC Kinetics. You know, this time of year, it's a little cloudy today, but most of the time it's been nice enough to go out and do just about anything that our city has to offer, and that's a whole lot of stuff. Hiking, biking, running, jogging, walking, right? If you're living here, you like to get outdoors and do stuff to a certain degree. And maybe you have arthritic joint pain that's keeping you from doing that. Listen, there are exciting new cellular therapies that can get you lasting relief with QC Kinetics. And I don't have time, nor am I qualified to fully explain it to you. I would just urge you to schedule a free consultation with QC Kinetics, and they can explain this as in depth as you need them to. But this is cutting edge treatments that accelerate your body's own healing properties, revitalizing your joints so you can move again. They've helped tens of thousands of patients across the country. They've set up shop here in Colorado Springs. They've been doing it for patients here. Learn how QC Kinetics can treat the pain, enhance your joints, restore your mobility, and give you long-term relief with no downtime, no surgery, no drugs, none of that stuff with QC Kinetics. Isn't it worth a free consultation? Just see what they have to say. 719-347-1988. That's 719-347-1988. This is the future of medicine. 719-347-1988. It's been my pleasure to serve you today. Appreciate the interaction. Make sure you vote. I was informed somebody sent me a screenshot saying my poll is broken because Tiger Woods out of the gate is leading Michael Jordan. Just let that sink in. So vote. Reveal the winner tomorrow, and we'll discuss the big one. Muhammad Ali versus either Jordan or Tiger Woods. And whatever else may happen in the 24-hour news cycle, we'll be sure to talk about it tomorrow. Enjoy your evening. And keep it locked here on Extra Sports 1300.